Osio, Halito. What up, everybody? I'm just coming to y'all today because yesterday I had a wonderful time with the Kansas City Cherokee community, all right? The firekeepers, all right? It was such an honor, meeting with them yesterday. They had a guest speaker. She was speaking on Cherokee spirituality, and her name was Dawni Saloli Squirrel. And it was just an honor and pleasure of, listening to her and her son. Her son actually broke down the story about the clans, how the clans came to be. And he talked about, going up on that mountain, how that mountain, that place, that sacred place still exists today. It was 7 elders that went there, and the fire that was started, and how they went out, and the things that stuck out to them, meaning the things that Great Spirit, the Creator, magnified to them, to where each one, saw that one animal, that one plant, spirit, whatever it was. And that's how these 7 clans came to be. Some say that there are 12 clans and that we are scattered throughout the earth. And one day we will be reunited. That's where, I come in also. That is a part of my purpose, is restoring and unifying our people. Our people need healing. We have been lost and scattered throughout the earth. And just us coming together and recognizing who we are, our roots, our identity, not only as an individual, but as a whole, as a group. And Dawni, she broke down, some things, and she confirmed some things just about, the spiritual ways and the cultures of our people, learning our language, our ways, our celebrating our festivals, the stomp dances, the powwows, the spiritual and herbal medicine. Y'all know that I flow in spiritual medicine. I'm learning from Divine Great Spirit, my ancestors and my guides, and of course my elders. I work with some elders that I'm learning from about the spiritual medicine ways and some herbal ways. The herbal kingdom is vast, and so that's gonna take a while to learn and master the herbal kingdom. But that I flow in spiritual medicine. Yesterday it was lovely. The people there, they were welcoming, very welcoming. Bobby, Dee, Annalise, and of course Dawni, and it was some other ones. I believe the other lady, her name was Deborah. And it was just an awesome experience. I'm here at the Kansas City Indian Center. My dad actually comes here and receives services here, and I'm so thankful to them. I want to say Wado, KCC, thank you for all that you do for our people. My flow in this, my purpose is also reuniting the people of my generation, the ones that are, rejected, the darker American Indians, the autochthonous, indigenous aboriginals of the earth. We are descendants of them, and reuniting us and knowing who we are, our identity, and to revive and restore those spiritual practices and culture, that the ways of our ancestors, to restore them unto our people. so that we can learn about them and, you know, apply it to our everyday life. So I'm really thankful for that experience. I want to say Wado to Dawni, Squirrel. That experience was awesome. When I left there, as I was leaving, I was turning on to, I believe it was 435. Dawni showed up. Dawni shows up in my life periodically, often, I would say, often. That was a part of my journey in awakening. It was in 2013 when Dawni came and sat above my head when I was sitting out on my balcony, and that was like the start of me awakening back to my roots. I already knew that I had indigenous culture. I already knew that I had that bloodline within me. Growing up, I already knew this, so that was the start of me reawakening to the spirituality and cultures of my people. And that is also the Cherokee, the Saloli, the Kituwa. All right. I really believe within my spirit, like I have an inner knowing that I'm a part of the bird clan. Birds do strange things in my presence. They've done this, you know, since I was young. The raven, the crow, Gulana, shows up in my life. I actually see one just about every day. They speak to me. And of course, like I mentioned, Dawni, which is the red-tailed hawk, the hawk spirit, the falcon spirit, speaks to me also. And then in the dream spiritual realm, the jaguar, the panther, the wildcat speaks to me, okay? And it's Tivdasti. All right, that's panther. So I'm learning, I'm relearning my ancestors' ways. I'm learning them. I'm soaking it in, and I'm applying it to my everyday life. A lot of things that I've learned, I learned them from, you know, Divine Great Spirit, the Creator. And I was doing those things, and then I would read something, or I would hear a speaker, an elder, say something, and I was like, okay, that's confirmation. I already was flowing in that. And so it is a beautiful thing to feel like you're home, spiritually, mentally, and physically. So this is a part of my culture. Y'all know that I also flow in the French Creole ways, and the American Indian ways, and some African ways, which is Agbulan. So my family bloodline is full of autochthonous, indigenous, aboriginal beings, okay? So I just want to say thank you again to the Kansas City Cherokee community, the fire keepers. We keep the spirituality and culture of our people going. I'm really thinking about, you know, fellowshipping with them more, because that experience was enrichment. It was enriching, and it was soothing to my soul. And I'm very thankful. I'm very, very thankful. I want to say Wado RRJXI to them. And I look forward to meeting with you all again. And Dawni, Squirrel, Saloli, her and her son, they did an awesome job, you know, just reminding us about the Cherokee, the Saloli, Kituwa spirituality. It was awesome. So I'm gonna have some clips of Dawni, Squirrel speaking about Cherokee spirituality in the meeting yesterday. So I just want to say thank you again. Wado RRJXI. Ashe. Ayo. I love you. Peace.
my talk today is Cherokee spirituality, but it's important to talk about where we come from. And some of our elders will say, Hastings Shade, who was our former deputy chief, he has since passed, said we came from the stars. And when I first heard that, you just sort of picture because your mind is used to being, making sense, trying to make sense of things. And then of all places, I was taking a science class one time at an SU, and the teacher started astronomy lesson, and he said, you are made up of the same things that stars are made up of. And I went, there's the answer. And I went, okay, that makes sense. They're talking about ancient beginning of time kind of things. We came from the stars. Okay. And so I then in turn invited that science teacher to a stomp dance in town, and he actually came out. So science and spirituality can coexist, in the right settings. And so that was really incredible to have that experience with that teacher. But it was actually a scientist that kind of helped me make sense of that. And so, but that's sort of the ancient concept. But our time here on Earth, we actually, what Hastings will tell too in his stories is that we came from an island in the South, which is really incredible to think about when you're in Oklahoma, when you're in Kansas City, and you think of yourself, your ancestors as being island people. And one of the stories is that we lived on an island surrounded by giant turtles that took care of us. And that concept is just almost as distant as coming from the stars because we're so inland. But one time I was at a conference and we had some scholars come up from Mexico, native scholars from the universities in Mexico. And one of them gave a story about their origin story and how their people left in canoes, that they were on this island and it was being destroyed. And the story is that native people weren't living as we were directed by the Creator. And so this island became inhabitable, but people left in 7 canoes. So he's telling this story in his language, and then there's a translator translating into English, and Hastings Shade was there. And he said, I have that story from where it picks up, from when you arrived here. This was not planned. It was one of those incredible learning moments where, again, connections were made. And Hastings then talked about our migration from the South and the 7, and we think of them as being the 7 clans. But there's a belief that there were originally, I believe, 12 clans, and that ultimately, as Cherokee people, that we're supposed to reunite with those other clans. And when you think of them as possibly still being in the South, I don't want to get too political, but when you look at the people in the South, Mexico, Central America, South America, those are indigenous people. There are still a lot of indigenous people down there. The belief is that we still have part of our people down there, that our clans still exist in those places, and that we are supposed to come back together at some point in the future. So that's incredible. So again, when I watch the news and stories on immigration, I go, we have sort of our own take on this issue. We have people down there. We don't know who they are, we don't know where they are, but spiritually, maybe something is supposed to happen and we're supposed to reconnect again with them. And they say after we reconnect, that it's supposed to be sort of a time in our period where we just really sort of flourish and spiritually, culturally, and that all of the things that we've had to overcome, and that we truly overcome them and we become a whole people again. So there's that sort of migration story, but then there's the piece that goes way into the future too. And what's wonderful about us meeting as Cherokee people all over the country is that we are still part of that migration story, as Jackie Archambault will say, who's one of our board members for the Cherokee Nation Community Association. She started telling that story as a way to, as our communities are all over the country, we're still part of that migration because Cherokee people, we aren't all in one village in Oklahoma, or even in Oklahoma, we're not in our original homeland of North Carolina. We're all over the place. And for various reasons, again, our ancestors left home, sometimes to go search for work, sometimes under false pretenses saying, you will have work. You know, and so for various reasons, we're all over the place. So we have an opportunity to really, I think, make a difference in the world. You know, I really think that we have values and teachings and beliefs that the world needs. And Chichi's going to tell a story in a little bit about one of our origins too, where the Creator actually said, you are to be an example in the world. Not just for each other, not just as Cherokees, just insular, taking care of ourselves only, the world. And that is a tall order. But we have values that were passed down through us that I think on some level it's still there, but we need to hear them again. And we need to think on them and put them into practice and watch the world change around us. I've seen that happen. I've been able to look at our values and go, I'm going to try that. You know, personally, it's going to be very hard to not just do something in anger. I'm going to take these values and work on bringing people together. And to see that happen, to see that change happen with others and within yourself is incredible. Our people were very strong community in terms of what kept people together. So, but I wanted to give you some of those origin stories. But when we came up from the south, there's a story that said we lived up in the northeast somewhere for a while, a land where it was cold. And then down into North Carolina area, which was like a 10 million acre, you know, we had like parts of what is now 10 states. That was a huge territory. So when I was growing up and I heard we lived in villages, you know, I just pictured kind of one big village in the east. We were all over the southeastern United States. We didn't see each other. That's why the clan system, I think, was so important then. So when you went to go visit another community, you found your clan family in that community and you were welcomed as family. And so I think that's why that clan system became so strong. But that area of southeastern United States, that's what we really considered home for a very long time, where we thrived, where we grew, where we were people that they say we got our name there. You know, before we were known as Cherokee, we were Ani Gaduwagi. That means to rise above. And I think we were given the correct name because we've had to do that over and over and over in our history. But we actually are not even originally Cherokee. We're Ani Gaduwagi, and Ani in front of something makes it more than one. So a people. And then the Gaduwagi means to rise. Like bread is the analogy, you know. And so that's who we are. And that was the name we were given by the Creator. So the stories go from our elders. So, and then of course, the trail. We ended up in Oklahoma, as so many tribes did. And then from Oklahoma, here we are, all over the country for various reasons again. But I asked Chiji if he would talk about our time when we were in North Carolina, near a place called Clingman's Dome. That you can, it's the highest mountain in the area. You can still go and visit this place where spiritually important things happened in our history that really still affect us today, that are still very important today. So I asked Chiji if he would tell this story about kind of our origins of where we got our medicines and clans, language, and direction. So.
So, what did you say that was, that highest place?
Clingman's Dome.
Clingman's Dome?
Clingman's Dome, and it's just outside of Cherokee, North Carolina.
Okay, thank you.
Whoa.
Saloli God, Argali Sikh, Dawni. I'm going to tell you a story of how we got our clans. So, we go here to KCC. A long time ago, we were in North Carolina, and we had people that we respected, like, as medicine men. And they were pretty much, I could say, godly. They were closer to God than kind of what we were. And so we respected them for a long time, but at some point they became corrupt with the power that they had over Ani Gitiwagi, that they had over us. So we started noticing how cruel they were being towards us and how corrupted they became with power. So we decided that we couldn't live with people that were treating us this way. So we wiped them out. And because we wiped them out, we started to stop believing in our own traditions and stop following our sacred beliefs. And we just started doing so many bad things since we lost our way. So more and more people started to die sooner and quicker. So people started noticing. And so there were these 4 elders that instructed the strongest young men that they could find, and there were 7 of them. So they instructed the men to go on top of the tallest hill or mountain they could find, which is Clingman's Dome today. And so one of them started his journey on the first day, and he got there. Another one started on the second day, so there was 2, and then it just worked its way up until on the 7th day, all 7 of them were on top of that hill. Then they heard a voice from the sky, just a really loud voice that said, "Build a fire." And so they built the fire, and after a little bit, a bolt of fire came down, and it was so bright that it lit up the sky as if it was day. And so it landed right there where that fire was, and it made the fire larger. So it was, you know, a pretty large fire. So eventually a man stepped out of that fire, from that firebolt, and he was glowing, all white, kind of like a neon color, kind of. And he stepped out and said, "Ichikewa, you forgot that you were Katuas." And so the 7 men said, "I know, that's why we came to the top of the hill." So the man instructed them to do these things, to leave the hill and just go out and look for things, something that would catch your eye. And so they did. And so one man found a wolf in the distance. He saw a wolf and he heard it howl, and that's what reminded him, that's what he thought of when he thought of something that he would remember. And so then the next man saw a panther or a bear, either one, panther or a bear, and that was our second clan. Our third clan, someone was at a spring and was washing their face and going to water, and looked up at a tree and saw like moss hanging down. It was so thin it looked like hair just hanging down from the tree. So that's how we got our third clan. The other man at the same lake or river or creek, just further on down, he was walking, and he stepped in this really like mushy mud, and he looked down and he noticed that it was really red, and he looked at it, and that's why we have red paint. They call it red paint. And then the next man saw a bird in the tree, and that's how we got Bird Clan. The next man saw a deer, and that's how we got our Deer Clan. And then the seventh man was walking around trying to find our next clan, whatever he saw, and thought it would be a nice clan. He tripped on these vines, and he looked at them, and he noticed that they really looked like wild savannah or wild potato, and that's how we got our 7 clans. So the 7 men went up to that hill, and the man that was glowing was still there, and so they brought back their information that they gathered, and that man said, "These are your 7 clans. These 7 things that you've seen are your clans. You are not allowed to marry anybody within your clan, and they are your family." And the man said to turn around and look at directly right behind you. And all seven of them did. And there was a plant there. And that man that was going said, "Take this and boil it into a tea, and your people will stop becoming sick." And so that's what they did. They took it and they boiled it, and the whole village started taking it. And everything started becoming normal again and having order, and just everything went back to normal how it should have been. That's how we got our 7 clans.
Right on it live. Let's see, where am I at? Judy mentioned the plants, but also that medicine. That is a medicine still made and used at our ceremonial grounds in Oklahoma. So after the trail, or before the trail, some of our people knew we were going, they saw what was going to happen. The story is that some people walked the coals from our ceremonial fire, that original fire that we got from that mountain, they brought it out early. They walked those coals out early. So the belief is that those ceremonial fires in northeast Oklahoma are still a part of that original burning fire that never went out. And so there are about 5 ceremonial grounds in northeastern Oklahoma that still dance throughout the month, throughout the year. And we have 2 in North Carolina that were rekindled because, you know, even though that's our homeland, the fires left, the people left for the fires. And so those fires actually returned home back to North Carolina, to our homeland. So that's pretty incredible that those fires still burn. But as Chuji said, those medicine people that went to the mountaintop, they took a piece of that fire back to their community. So in ancient times, our communities each had a ceremonial fire. So the concept of being from one fire, that's where that comes from. So sometimes you hear that at the Cherokee Nation. There's a department for people that are victims of domestic abuse, and it's from the foundation where it's called One Fire. And so it's a very empowering thing to think that you come from one fire. And so I think people don't always understand how strong that concept is within our culture of being from one fire, even though many fires came from that one.
When I was growing up, like I said, my grandmother passed away before I got to learn too much. But I remember my mother and my grandma saying that we were from the Bear Clan. Well, when I would tell people that, they would say there is no Bear Clan. So there was.
Yeah, it's under the panther and bear. And there's a plant there as well. Under those people, that clan of people, there are actually 2 or 3 different designations, but they're still kind of considered one. So panther, bear, blind savanna, right? Is that one of the plants? I think blind savanna. So there's like within that clan family, there are clans, families within that as well.
It
So,
makes
yeah.
me feel better because
Yeah.
I was like, I heard that and I'm like, well.
And it's one of the few that is, like deer, we're deer. There's nothing else there. A bird, you're bird. But under that one, for some reason, there are 3 or 4 in that designated clan. But it's still considered one clan. So, yeah, so bear is, yeah. Yeah.
What about blue?
Blue, that's it as well. So
It's also under bear?
Blue, panther, bear, and blind savannah. Yeah.
Is all in one?
Yeah, it's all in one family. Oh, not blue?
Or is blue under bird?
Blue and panther?
It's blue, but not savannah.
Not savannah.
Not
Okay, so
savannah.
blue, panther, and bear.
Bear.
Okay, so
And there's
blind
like-
savannah is something else.
And there's like anything else between like a saber-tooth tiger and stuff like that.
Oh, even saber-tooth tiger, I forgot
And,
about
like,
that.
other stuff like that.
So we're
They
talking
just-
about, we're ancient people. And so when we talk about panther, it even goes back to saber-tooth tiger, even in that clan as well.
I'll just share with you what Mr. Benny Smith told me about the clans, that the names that we have in English now, they're kind of wonky because the original names of a lot of the clans, when they translated them, they mistranslated them. And so he said for bear, that word Sahoni refers to how a bear walks. So even though people kind of mixed up with Sahoni for blue, really is referring to the way the bear walks.
Yeah.
And he identifies different animals with each clan, as a different animal we're supposed to be emulating. And blind savannah, some people say wild potato.
Okay.
And then some people will say it refers to ones that live in the savannah, like little small animals like rabbits and things like that.
And much like names too, have been mistranslated as well. So there's a lot of mistranslation that we still have to kind of work through and go. And when you sit down with speakers, you will hear amazing, incredible detail about what the thoughts were originally before translation. So, let's see. So that's our, I wanted to emphasize that we still take those medicines and that those grounds exist, ceremonial grounds. And let's see, I talked about Anigaduwagi, our original name. But I want to also point out too that to rise means it's not a noun. Our name is an action. We're supposed to do something and be something to make a difference. This is how I interpret it. So our name has very special meaning. To be Anigaduwagi, to rise, we're supposed to do that and help others do that as well. And y'all, anytime you have a question, just throw it out there.
Well, I'm so impressed with your story because
Yes.
we got to tour the boarding school, and you hear these stories, but you don't really connect with them until you actually see that they actually, and why did they do it? And they're still doing it in parts of the country.
So it still happens. And I tell you, of all that I've heard about our history, and some of it's tragic, but some of it's very uplifting too. But when I think about being separated from a child, or a child separated from family, it's unimaginable to me, especially after I became a mother. It is unimaginable to think that my child would have had to grow up separate from me, because we were very close. It was cruel. It's cruel, and it continues to be. And I think that's another thing we can do as Cherokee people, as organized communities. We can always sort of be mindful of that and watch for those things happening in our communities as well. And so, even though we're supposed to be non-political groups, there are still things we can do as groups to voice and say, especially on issues like that really direct our kids, our families. We really have the opportunity to be a strong voice.
I can't
there as
imagine.
well. No, I can't.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Say, this happens every day.
Yeah,
Children
still
are being
does.
taken every day. I know more about South Dakota and how that works there because many of my friends are Dakota. And they take
So many things outside of us have been offered as solutions to our problems. The problems that we face, those answers are in the culture. The answers are in the spirituality. The answers are in the community. They are. Just even in my short time at the Cherokee Nation, I see all these outside solutions come in, that are proposed to help us. Our solutions are internal, and which is one reason why I think this topic of spirituality is so important, because it helps you cope, potentially help you cope, and it gives you direction. Again, we're to the people that rise after we've been through so much, and we still continue to do that, and we still continue to, we have these common stories, and so the more we can share those, the better.
Yeah. And like I was in high school, a bunch of white people jumped me, kind of mixed breed, and put me in the hospital for a while. Now sometimes I can't even walk. So, I got into drugs and alcohol,
Yeah.
and by the grace of God, He got me out. I've been clean since '99. Doing drugs for 30 years. I started in '68. I quit in '99, so you can figure out how much I've been doing that a long time.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I'm glad I'm clean. And before you leave, I want you to, that prayer that you started with, I would like for you to write that down for me. Okay? So I can pray that every morning.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
And that might help me get thinner.
Yeah.
And go from there.
Okay.
Can we also get your email?
Sure, yes, I'll give you everything I have. Yeah, I'm here for you, actually.
Yes, ma'am. I got one more question. Okay. That group, the people from Mexico, do you remember what tribe that was?
No, because there's nothing in our stories that gives specific names and places even. But I've been researching that for a while, and I came across some paperwork recently, just kind of piecing stories together. And west of the Yucatan, there's a community there where there were some similarities I found, and I can't remember if it was in language or something, but I thought somebody said that might be a good place to look. And even when you think of the Yucatan, we have a spiritual creature that we call Yucatan. And and this spiritual creature it was a large feathered serpent with horns and a crystal. And they say that it created havoc for us for a long time, but somebody, when we were able to take its crystal, it died, but they still exist. They still exist. So it's incredible that, there's that place called the Yucatan. So I think there are, as I'm piecing things together, it seems like that area, the Yucatan and west of there, seems like that we may have spent some time there. I also met a man recently at one of our at-large meetings in Tucson, and he has a ceremonial ground outside of Tucson in the middle of the desert, 15 miles out to the desert. I went to visit him, and he showed me this area where he put the fire, and spiritually it was placed there. And there were these mountains, 7 points, and in the distance is a mountain that looks like a sleeping bear. And he had come across a story in our migration too that kind of describes that place. And I was just amazed, because you don't expect to find that in the desert in Tucson. So as I've traveled, I want you all to know this. Now all of the answers and not all of the culture is in Oklahoma or North Carolina. It's everywhere. And so there are all these pieces, and that's something I really learned in my travels, is that we all have pieces to our story, very important key pieces. I did not expect that in Tucson, in the desert, to find something out about our spirituality and ceremony, and possibly part of our original migration. And so he even had a theory about the Anisazi, the the cliff dwellers who disappeared, and scientists say we don't know where they went. Well, Ani saw. In Cherokee is goose. They migrate, they move on. And so more than it, so they call themselves the Ani Sazi. And so if you say Ani Sa, that would be people, like people that move. So I don't have any scientific backing for any of this. It's just these stories come together and I go, that's weird.
It's spiritual.
So again, it's in the desert, you know. And so when you think about our history, when you put all that together, we've been island people, mountain people, prairie people, woodland people, desert. You know, we have been a part of sort of every climate there is, and that's really incredible that we have lived in places and we have adapted to those places no matter what. And so that really, I think, says a lot about us as well.
And the man that was speaking, what was his nation? The man, you said there was a man that came from Mexico and he was speaking in native language.
He was the one in Tucson. I invited him to come speak at our conference, and his name is Ernie Frost, and he's Cherokee.
Oh, and then the conference you were talking about with
the ancient. That was an old conference, the Scholars Conference.
Yeah, where Hastings Shades finished.
That was part of the Cherokee Humanities course, and that was probably about 18 years ago, and it was held at the Cherokee Heritage Center. But it was part of the gathering, the Cherokee Humanities class, and it still continues in Tahlequah. But that was the one year that we brought scholars up from Mexico.
And but where, do you remember the language or where?
I don't.
That would be neat to know.
Yeah. I'll have to go back and do some research because it was so unexpected and everything had to be translated. So, yeah. But they came from universities in the South, so, yeah.
Dawni?
Yeah.
When we took the history course back in 2004, Julia gave us like a printout of the island story. It sounded like Atlantis.
It kind of does.
Okay, and she said that they still had the names of the waterways where they traveled up, and they kind of tracked it from South America all the way up to the Ohio Valley, where the Cherokee spent time in the Ohio Valley, and then went and spent time with the Iroquois people. And our language is supposed to be that same kind of language. And I don't know how long the time periods were, but then when we came down into the Smoky Mountains, she said there was a race of little white beings that we ran off, and that those were the mound builders. Those were the mound builders down there. We didn't put the mounds there, that those were them, but we ran them off, which, well, I guess is kind of rude on our part. They may have been little aliens, I don't know.
Yeah.
But did you guys remember that? Okay. Yeah. And so I always thought that was really interesting because she said the reason that when the Europeans were asking the native people in the Smoky Mountain areas who, about the mounds, they said, no, those were the little people, and not that we didn't see the little, our Cherokee little people, but they were like a white, not like a Caucasian white, but some kind of other being.
Like a spiritual being or something. That
were little, that we just, I guess, ran them out of town. I don't know. That's some bad karma there. We need to make amends, but.
Yeah, I'm always making amends. I haven't heard that, but there is a book called, and it talks about these migrations, and it's the tiniest little book. The first part of it's in Cherokee, and then there's an English translation. What is that book? But y'all need to see that, because it talks about that ancient history. And what it really talks about is not so much that there were people here or spiritual beings here, but it talks about a group of white beings that came to the Americas, and we fought them off. Then dark colored beings, we fought them off twice. The Uktan that I mentioned earlier, that serpent, actually we had to kill it to get its medicine to help us to overcome them. But at some point we were just overcome, obviously. And so, let me think on that book, because it's a very, very important one to have, because it also has Cherokee translation interpretation as well, because you will find all kinds of information out there on Cherokees, and I'm guessing probably 99.9% of it is probably false. So y'all probably need to have the best resources. So I'll find that and give you that book if you want to send that out to people. I also want to point out the council house. We had the ceremonial fire each community, hundreds of communities, but we also had a council house. Now in the country today, we have separation of church and state. We didn't have that. Everything was conducted under the council house, whether it's spiritual, ceremonial, communal, governance, you know, and our women had elder women had very strong influence in that place. And so, but the center of that was our ceremonial fire. And so we, in the past, could not separate church and state in our form. And so somehow we made it all work. Today, when I see things around me, it doesn't work well. It doesn't work well, separation of church and state. But I want people to understand that at the center of our governance at one time was that ceremonial fire, that constant reminder. That fire was supposed to be, the smoke carries prayers to heaven. That fire is communication with the Creator, and it brings people to the center. That's what the fire really represents. And so under one roof, we did all of that. And so when I go to, say, a tribal council meeting today, it's not there. That kind of dialogue and that kind of feeling of being next to something spiritual, it's very, my point is what we have adopted is very much outside of our ancient systems. And so when you watch things, when you watch politics and things like that, remember, it's not our way, that we had these ancient ways that worked better for us. And if our elder women were in charge today, I think we would have a different world. So, roles and responsibilities in a ceremonial ground, in carrying out ceremony, everyone has value. Everyone contributes, and everyone is listened to, whether it's the tiniest baby who is babbling to the elder. You know, that's very important that everybody has an opportunity to speak and contribute. And many times, you know, in a community, we need that, because as leaders, we're here to carry out your wishes. That's what we call servant leadership. That's the old way that actually the people were, if it were a pyramid, it would be upside down. The people are here, and then the chief is down here. You know, that these leaders are here to carry out the wishes of the people, what the people want done. We think that we live in a country that's like that, that's democratic. It's really not, and we're really seeing that. But know that you come from a people that did. You did that. We did that. That are the people who said, I don't even want to say put in power, because it wasn't really even power. It was responsibility to carry out the wishes of the people. And so I want everyone to understand that everyone has value in our communities. Everyone has a voice. I've been at meetings where, you know, the smallest child was given an opportunity to speak. She was 2 years old, and she said, I want to keep learning Cherokee. And that's all she said. But it inspired everyone to make sure that that was still in place for her, you know. And so sometimes you don't even have to say a whole lot. She got her point across. So language, we're making a very strong effort, as we talked about, to revitalize our language. Now that we're up to almost 350,000 enrolled Cherokees in the Cherokee Nation. The Eastern Band have over 10,000. United Kituwa Band in Tahlequah have over 10,000. So we're pretty large in number, but we only have about 2,500 speakers left. And we're losing them every day, because what I used to consider an elder, 70s, 80s, and 90s, we're not making it there anymore because of our lifestyle, our diets, and those sort of things. So we're losing people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s back home now. and the majority of our speakers, the 2,500 we have left, are probably 50 and over, and we're losing them quicker. So we are trying to beat the clock in saving our language. And that's going to take an effort on everyone's part. Again, it's everyone's responsibility in some way to learn or to support or advocate something, or make sure the kids learn, because that's who it will carry it on. And so we're trying to do things as a nation, as Dee said, where we're paying people to learn the language Monday through Friday like a job. And they are in the program for 2 years, and we're finding that to be real successful. Of course, we have the immersion school for the little kids, and then we have a program at NSU. So you can start as young as a 6-week-old baby in our system now, in daycare, and go all the way up through college and learning Cherokee. Now, it's not a perfect system, because as one of the mistakes we make is we put value in those systems outside of ourselves in terms of learning. We have to learn like our parents and grandparents learned in a natural setting, that we're trying to bring it back and say public school kind of settings, college settings, which are needed, but sometimes we forget to make the learning environment more natural, and we can. So we always have to constantly advocate for the learning to be correct for how we learn. So, but my point here too is that as I have spent time with speakers, they'll say our language is a spiritual language. There's so much understood in the language. There's so much understood in just silence with one another even. And that our philosophies are built into the language. My mother always said things were funnier in the language because there are these pictures, she said, that you think of when people are speaking in the language. So the language is not like English. It's not like other languages. There's something powerful about it. There's something spiritual about it. And so another reason why it's important to hold on to it. And so we had a class recently in Phoenix where the Phoenix Cherokee community took an online class, and they had graduates of it. And it's the first time we've had an online language class tailored to an at-large community. Whereas right now, most of the classes, anyone can take them online, but you don't have you don't connect with a community or another speaker. So we're really trying to tailor that better to your community so that when you visit, you can practice language together, or you can start practicing online even. So we're really looking at those things right now. So again, our language is a spiritual language. Let's see. We don't have a Bible per se, but we do have something called the belts. And they were made from shell, and some say seaweed, when we lived in the East. These belts still exist, and they are like maybe you've seen the Iroquois, the wampum belts. They have symbols on them that are supposed to tell a symbol for a story or a treaty or something like that. We had them too. We're told that there are 7 of them, and that one of our ceremonial grounds in Northeast Oklahoma still has them. They still exist. They're not in good shape, but at some point at our ceremonial dances, that people would bring them out, our medicine people would bring them out and not interpret them, just say what they meant in Cherokee. It was our responsibility to understand what they meant in our understanding. And so, but those still exist. So we have things in existence that are ancient and that tell us how we're supposed to live and treat one another. And there's one belt that is just all white, and it talks about the white path, the way. And so that color represents for us peace. And so that is a path we're supposed to be on, is to find a path of peace, to create peace and to find peace within ourselves. And that is what that belt is there for. And so a reminder of how we're supposed to live and be and exist. So if you ever get a chance, look up the 7 belts of the Cherokee. You will see some detail in those belts about that. And that there's a story at the Eastern Band Museum about a belt that was supposed to have burned up in a fire, but it still exists, like spiritually. The story is that it came back, and that this belt is supposed to be sort of a symbol of unity for us as a people. And so that's a really important part of Cherokee spirituality too, is to understand those belts. Let's see. It's already 3:30. I'm gonna have to get quick. Okay. And again, when I talk about spirituality, I already touched on this, but we're to be an example in the world, not just to each other, but everyone in the world. And so we have talked about at our meetings the values. Now, we got these values from Benny Smith as well. And he has them in Cherokee and English interpretation. And what the Cherokee community values come down to really is unity and working together. There are 20 probably listed here, but every one of them is about working together in unity. There's not one thing here really about being an individual and just taking care of yourself. That's just not who we are. The real common one that everybody knows, a lot of people know, is the Dawni, people coming together as one and working to help one another. But there are many beyond that. There are many beyond that, but it kind of sums up all of them. The second one, strengthen one another with encouraging words in all that you do. Live and never give up on what you start. Be stingy with one another's existence, like a mother with a child. And we kind of think of stingy as being kind of a bad thing, but it's that bond. We're supposed to love everyone like that, not just our children, but everyone. That is incredible. That's really incredible. Like one another without conditions. Admire one another. That's hard to do. Struggle to hold on to one another or cling to one another. Treat each other's existence as being sacred or important. You all live helping one another. In the mind and heart, always have the thought of working together. You all have a strong conviction for and believe in one another. You all take responsibility for one another's well-being. Watch over and wait for one another. So we're kind of used to someone trying to get across that finish line first. We're supposed to kind of look behind and help each other. Yeah. Live and support each other in all that you do. You all gang up on work whenever and wherever it arises. Live united. Work as a team with one another. Visit one another with love. Locate and find one another. I feel like that's what I do. That if I have a job description, I feel like that's what I do. Visit one another with love. Locate and find one another. Live and be very skilled in all areas of life. Be resourceful. And as Cherokees, we've had to be. Sometimes I've had to work with nothing. I've had to make something out of nothing. No funds, no supplies, no except we're going to do something, you know. And I think that's part of this. We're going to do something. Encourage and instruct one another in a gentle and thoughtful way. Think of one another in spiritual prayer and healing with medicine. Include everyone, all humankind, however many. That's the big one to me. That's the big order. That's the tall order. And that can be very difficult because we are so diverse in our experiences and our beliefs. But that's a big one. That's the one I work to strive for. Direct one another in the right way without confining or pushing. And that's a good one too, because we all have our own ways of doing things, and if I just do it myself, it'll get done right. Well, then nobody learns how to do it. And so, these teachings really talk about how to work better in a community. And so I wanted to point that out again. And I want to make sure you all have all of these handouts. So Linda, I'm just going to send everything to you. Okay. And I'm going to send what is my PowerPoint to everybody as well, so you'll have what I discussed today. Crosland said too, because I go visit Crosland pretty often now, which has been really nice. Crosland and Benny Smith are brothers. Of course, Benny lives here, and Crosland still lives at their home place in Bayan, near Stokes Ceremonial Ground. And he is considered the spiritual leader for the Cherokee Nation. Chief calls on him for, openings of buildings, or, you know, when we were sending the bike riders off to North Carolina recently for the Remember the Renewal ride, he will come and offer prayers. And his prayers are strong. And I have been following medicine people since as far back as I can remember, what we call our medicine people that work with our plant medicine and spiritual medicine too. And when I turned 16, I was old enough to drive. I was going out and visiting medicine people and taking on that responsibility for my family of ensuring the well-being of my family. It was a lot. It was a lot to take on as a 16-year-old. And Crosland was somebody I had met even before then. My mother would, if there was a medical emergency, we would go to Crosland before we went to a hospital. I remember my brother was bit by something once, and the red line started going up his arm, and Crosland stopped it. And so I have a lot of faith in him. And I went to see Crosland before I went to Standing Rock last year, and for prayers and things to do there. And I said, well, Crosland, I said, he's given me all these instructions, and I said, can I do these things as a woman? You know, you've already given me all the instructions. Do I pass this on to somebody, or do you want me to do them? He said, well, in our way, we had a woman, a man, and a child, spiritual leaders. And he said, so it's not an unusual thing. But in modern times, we kind of moved away from that, the woman being like a healer. And so he instilled in me, so, you know, that it was okay, but I wasn't used to that, because I was used to going to see medicine men work out. But then I thought of my great-grandmother, who was a medicine woman. If there were any issues, that's where we went, whether it was spiritual darkness, weather, you name it. That's where we went for help, for comfort, and for healing. And so Crosland said, Dawni, I made it to 88. That was his way of saying, I outlasted him. So you probably need to believe me. And of course I did, but I just didn't believe in myself, you know. And so he's very, I brought him up because he said something recently about us I want to say, it was kind of a hard thing to hear, but as spiritual people, no matter what your faith is, he said, many think we are honoring God, but we aren't. We have to start at square one again. And that was whether you're a traditionalist in the Cherokee stomp dance or church, because he visits people come see him from all over the world. So he has had interaction with many people, and there was something about that. There's something about going through the motions of spirituality and actually feeling it and living it too. And so that was something that really, really touched me. Oral tradition, you all have that. So much of who we are was passed down through stories. It's hard to go find a book on Cherokee spirituality and say, this is what I'm going to practice. You know, so much of who we are, it comes down to those values and how we treat one another. I think, when I think of Cherokee spirituality, that's where you see it really come into play, is how we treat one another. Yeah. You talked about the clans. I want to talk about quickly tobacco, water, and cedar. As I've traveled, people give me medicines, and I use them, like plant medicines and things like that. I get a lot of sage, and I use it. But I want people to know that our strongest medicines as Cherokee people, and you have them here, tobacco, water, and cedar. Tobacco, water, and cedar. Tobacco, they say the spirit of the Creator is in the tobacco already. You can pray over it, put your prayers into it, but that was a special gift for people, for the native people, for Cherokee people. And that it's not to be abused and smoked in a way that is harmful to you. And Crosland even said recently that the original intent for the use of it was just to sprinkle. And I'm going to end today with what he taught me. And that's the first time I had heard that tobacco is just used to pray and sprinkle. But he said the Spirit of the Creator is already in that. And so, cedar, growing up, when we needed to clean our home spiritually, we used cedar. And we would start in the inside of the house, on the east side, and move around clockwise and let it burn. And then we would go outside counterclockwise around the house as well. I still do that. I still do that when I feel like it's needed. And so cedar, I'm told, is something that will clean anything negative. It just removes everything. And then you can bring in the positive again. And so cedar is our medicine. And water. Water is one of our strongest medicines. At our conference, we took people to water. When we started doing the conference, I wanted to ensure that what we had there was meaningful and real. That I didn't want to sugarcoat the teachings and the values and the spirituality. With respect to the ceremonial grounds, I said, what can we do? What can we offer? What can we be in the open with? Because there was a time, 100 years ago, that the United States said Native people cannot practice their religion, their ceremonies. Not until 1978 was it legal again for us to practice. Now we practice anyway. You can't stop a people really from practicing their beliefs, but that really influenced us because so much of our ceremonies are still hidden. They're still done at night. They're hard to find, and I think it's from that period of time 100 years ago where we had to go into hiding. And so people are still of the mindset of keeping it protected. And so I have to go to people and say, what can we share? And I can bring, I try to bring things out a little at a time. But the water ceremony is they say when you go to the water and pray over it, and then you get in the water and you kind of splash yourself, clean yourself 7 times. Suzanne, I know, this is part of upbringing, that whatever is negative on you, internally, externally, the water will take that negativity away as far as that water flows. And so people still practice that. And they say people go to water on their birthdays before noon. And so that's a good time to do it as well, or renewal time. So that is part of your heritage. And so that still exists today. And Crosland takes people to water. Benny Smith took people to water with bottled water. And people just couldn't believe it. But, it's prayed over water. Yeah, it's prayed over water.
Water is water.
And so I want to point out too, when I talk about Cherokee spirituality, our people go to church, they go to ceremonial grounds. Some go to one, some go to the other, some go to both.